The Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today is our May recap episode. It's absolutely wild to me that we are about to head into June and that summer is upon us. So today you will hear clips from interviews that aired in the month of May featuring Ben and Jack from Acres, Carlos from Behölder, Johan from Candlemass, Daniel Winter Bates of Bury Tomorrow, Camille from Novelist, Robert and Martin from Pridian, Johan and Pierre from Year of No Light, and Steve from Wolves at the Gate. Just a solid month of interviews, in my opinion. Killer bands. If you haven't checked out the interviews, I hope these clips inspire you to go check them out. If you haven't checked out any of the records that these bands have been on supporting, definitely recommend you spend some time checking out the music these bands have put out. Thanks so much for listening to As the Story Grows. If you're brand new to the podcast, thanks so much for checking out this episode. It's cool that you decided to drop in on a recap episode. You can find links in the show notes or at asthestorygrows.com for our mailing list, our Discord server, and our Patreon page where you can get early access to every episode. Enjoy today's recap of all the episodes that aired in the month of May. You guys signed with Solid State. I think that was announced shortly after that tour with Holding Absence. How'd you guys get connected?
It was kind of after Burning Throne, and we worked with Garrett from Silent Planet on a song on Burning Throne called Nothing. And I think once the record was out, Solid State were into what we were doing, jammed the album, and then kind of we were at the end of our deal with Wolf and said, would you guys be interested in signing? And then we had a couple of meetings and went from there, which was great because America was somewhere I was kind of begging everybody that we want to start being a part. Like we want to go to America and we want to, and so having an American label and then luckily signing to the American booking agent as well, things just fell into place and they've been nothing but great to us so far.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Wicked. Yeah. My musical background is coming up through that kind of Christian hardcore scene that Solid State was like built in the 90s. And so like I remember a time when like Zayo released an album and like people on the internet would be like, yeah, they're great, but they're Christian, so fuck them. And so do you have any, or did you have any sort of weirdness? I've talked to some of your other like label mates about this, like with signing to a label with that sort of background and history, or is it so just like history and ancient past now that it's like the label is just cool and good for bands now?
Yeah, I think it was just cool. Like there was no ever, I mean, I think Alex is way more tuned into the Solid State bands than I am. And he said, there used to be a Christian label. And then I was just like, oh, okay. And that was probably the most it went.
like none of us are like religious in the slightest. I didn't think there'd be any backlash. There's like the odd YouTube comment where it's just like, well, this lyric isn't religious, or like, oh, he cursed or whatever. But you're gonna get that anywhere. I think it's just something that's in the past, and that was how they came up. But now it's a completely different beast.
Yeah.
I feel like we're a decade into that being a thing where it doesn't matter anymore, but people are still so precious about it that they get hung up on it. And a new band on the label says fuck and everybody freaks out. It's like, guys, who cares? What was the process of kind of putting together the lyrics for this record? Obviously, everything is D&D inspired, and you mentioned going through the books. But what was that process of like trying to pull material and come up with these themes and ideas?
So usually with pretty much anything I ever write, I typically, by the time I get to the end of a composition, I've got a title for it. The title may change, but the vibe of the music and everything else, by the time I get toward the end of it, I've already got kind of an idea of what I'm feeling would be a good subject matter to apply to that music. And so a lot of these things I had the titles kind of worked out and stuff, and even a couple of them I had, just sort of like one or two sentences, like a synopsis idea, and then when it came time to really start working out lyrics and melodies, the process is basically I have this completed composition. I would throw it at John with my arrangement written out for him, like bar this to bar that is, I'm calling verse 1 and, whatever. And so, and then I would tell him also, like, I kind of feel that this would be kind of cool about this in particular or something. And sometimes that's what he would run with, and he would look up information. But John being John, and I love him for this, sometimes he just was like, I had something else in mind. And I'm like, you tell. So, for instance, like with Pale Blood Sky, as an example, he had in mind some kind of like supernatural, Lovecraftian style detective story. And he was kind of inspired by the movie The Exorcist 3, which when he told me that, he's like, I'm thinking like something like, The Exorcist 3? I'm like, I love The Exorcist 3. Okay. So boom, right away, we're on the same page. And I'm like, okay, but I had to like kind of keep him on the rails a little bit because again, he's not really well versed in Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. And, so he wants to do it right. It's important to him to do it right. Mm-hmm. So I send him the music. He sends me a rough draft of like some rough melodies and some pretty well worked out lyrics and stuff, but still rough. It's just a first pass, And then and like any song, then I kind of take that and I go, okay, let's streamline this. Let's change that. Could you try this? Would you be okay with changing it to that? Blah, blah, blah. And then I would write lyrics based off of that. So I'm kind of like filling in the gaps. And then I would throw it back at him. He would try I would sing the parts, like rough demos to him and stuff that I had in mind that were different than what he had. And then he would do it. And if we agreed that it sounded good, I'd be like, okay, let's roll with that. And that was for the majority of the material. There was one song in particular that is pretty much 100% him, which is the song For Those Who Fell. Okay. He sent me his first draft of that. I didn't change a goddamn thing. Okay. That's perfect as is. The only thing I asked him to do in that song was to extend the verse parts, and I changed the arrangement to accommodate that. Because sometimes you don't know, like you hear a part, you write it out and it sounds like it's a good length, like before you move to the next thing. But depending on what a singer does, the vocal melody might lend itself to saying like, this needs to be longer because otherwise it feels cut off if you move to the next part too soon, Yeah. So that one was pretty much primarily all him. And then there were a couple of songs where he gave me like a really super rough idea, and then I just kind of took over from there and totally completed like the melody lines and lyrics. So, but regardless, it's I would never come up with the stuff that I come up with if he hadn't come up with it first. Yeah. And he wouldn't come up with his stuff if I hadn't come up with the music. You know what I mean? So it's a collaborative across the board effort in order to make these things happen. So.
After 32 years in 2018, you rejoined the band. What was the conversation like? And I mean, did it take a lot of convincing? I mean, that's a long layoff.
No, actually not. You know, I've been into music in one way or another all of my life. So when Mappe called me up, it was actually perfect timing in my life. You know, I have a big family, 4 kids, and they all have moved out. So I told Mappe that, but I have to listen to the songs first, for what you're doing these days. And I went to the studio actually the very next day and listened to some of the Doors to Doom songs, and I just told them right away that, cool, I'm in. And then we pretty much actually started the recording right away.
Yeah.
So it was a fast entrance.
Did you have any vocal, I guess not vocal training for early days of maybe Barry Tomorrow, unless you're doing clean vocals, but like,
yeah.
Did you have like choir or, you know, theater kid experience, like doing any sort of vocal performance, or was it just kind of self-taught and learning on the job?
Yeah, absolutely self-taught. Like, and like really quickly, I like transitioned to kind of screaming. Like, I did like sing when I was younger, and still like kind of I love notation. Like it's like my favorite thing, thinking about different melodies and that kind of side of things. So I knew that from playing piano. But when it comes to like vocal technique, no, and vocally screaming, it was I watched like Melissa Cross videos, but that was quite late on. I'd already been being a vocalist since 2006. I'd recorded Portraits without that. So 2009. So it's around the 2009, 2010 mark that I started kind of looking up how to scream. I'd only ever just done it. Yeah. It was what it was, and never really had too many issues with it. I found like as I got a little bit older, because we were touring a lot more, like I was definitely like, I want to learn how to do this where I'm not needing to be like amped up and like stuff like that. And I'd seen more and more vocalists because we'd toured like America, and we'd done like 6 weeks on with Attack for like, which was like mad. We had like 2 days off in 6 weeks, which was just insane amounts of shows with Attack back in 2010. And I remember thinking, I can't not learn how to do this, because if I'm ever in trouble, which a couple of those shows, you know, I was in trouble. Like I needed to have a rest day, and I had to power through it and learn. So I learned a lot on the job, did Melissa Cross stuff, the Zen of Screaming, and that really helped me out. That started to slot some bits and pieces in place. And then from kind of 2011, when we had like a big off period, I'd relearned how to scream. So I basically taught myself to forget how I used to do it, and I fully relearned. So it wasn't like an adaptation, it was just fully relearn, and I relearned Fry, and that really helped me out massively. Then Union of Crowns was recorded, and that was all in that vein. And then basically what I've done since is just slowly implement back into my voice what I used to do as well. So I've got like this weird combination scream, which is like Fry and false chord together, like literally at the same time. And now I've like, you know, I know Melissa now, and I've had that sort of, I've never really had a formal lesson. We've always trying to work something out. So I was supposed to do a conference in the UK with her. And it just never materialized. But since knowing her, like if there's ever like a thing that I'm like querying, I'll be like, hey, I've thought about this. Like, where does the mechanism sit? So I'm obsessed with like mechanistic kind of screaming. So where it's coming from, how it's coming from, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, kind of a journey with it, but I would say predominantly self-taught. But there's so many good videos out there for people, like those YouTube videos. And all I'd say just to people is not to overthink it. Just kind of go where the energy is. The more you overthink it, the more you'll wreck your voice up. So you might as well just find some people that have got some good knowledge base, learn a bit, and then try a bit, essentially.
much does your vocal performance influence the songwriting for Coda? Because when I listen to the record, if I were an A&R person on any record label, I'd be like, this is a band that should blow up and be huge. And there seems to be some buzz from the band from the single so far. So what went into the writing process? Because it seems like this is really all our influences are on the line on this record.
Yeah. So as I'm new to the band, it was new for them to it was a new way to create. Like the creative process was different than before. I think I have another range than the previous singer also. So we could play differently with music and with the melody and chorus. And so when we went on studio, they were like putting the instrumental part, and I was going into the booth, like recording booth, and I was like improvising stuff. And Nico, the bassist, or Amma, the drummer, they were like, okay, we're going to pick this part that you just sang and this part. And like they were doing like a puzzle. and in the end, we were like adjusting to create like the melody we really wanted to. So we are really proud of this record. And we really try to create something different and new that might surprise or shock people.
Yeah.
But that's what we want to do. We don't want to do the same thing we did before. Like for us, there is no point to do the same thing. If you like the old thing, just go listen to the old previous album. This is going to be new. You're going to be shocked. You're going to be surprised. And I think we managed to do this with this album, and we are really proud of this.
So goddamn tired of my face. I can't stand the man behind those eyes. I wanna punch the wall and feel my knuckles break. I'm badly wired.
This might come as a shock to you guys, but you're the first band from Estonia I've ever talked to. So what is the music scene like over there, whether it's a general music scene or maybe specifically like if you're into metal?
So I think for the general music scene, it's we have a very active pop music scene. We have a lot of festivals. I'd say for like per capita, we have a lot of festivals. We have a lot of live music, but the scene is still very small. If you think about, I don't know, professional musicians that do sessions and live touring, then the circle is super small. I'd say if you like, I've been playing in some pop bands for about 3 years now, and I don't think there's a live musician I haven't met in the 3 years. And the festival I haven't played in that sense because it's still a very small circle, but it's very nice to tour around Estonia, but it's only possible if you're in the pop scene. Every other scene is basically super small, super how do you say, like underground.
Mm-hmm.
There's no money.
Yeah, there's no money. Yeah. And there's really no opportunity either, because if you do any sort of alternative music, then you're instantly out of people to play to. There just isn't enough crowd.
Yeah,
but it's getting better now.
Yeah.
But I see it not only with like metal musicians, but I also see it with like alternative, I don't know, pop or rock. They also don't have the crowds, so it's not like a metal issue that the scene is small. It's an Estonian issue, sort of.
Yeah. Do you think streaming music and maybe Spotify or YouTube has made it, I don't know, easier for people to get into this music, and so that's helping create fans in Estonia, or no?
I would say it's strictly because of freshly founded heavy music association, which we now have, which didn't exist before. It's only like maybe 2 years old, something like that. Pretty much it got started when there was a Tallinn Music Week, like 2 years ago now, where we performed at. That was their first showcase that they like had. Yeah, they hosted that, and that's the first. Actually, that was the same showcase that we got seen by a person who worked for Century Media, and that's pretty much how we got signed. Actually.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, but since that, the scene has expanded like crazy. Like there's been so many bands coming out of the woodwork now, and everybody's suddenly super talented. There's like finally an outlet and like a purpose, like to do this because we can actually achieve stuff now.
I think streaming hasn't been very useful, but yeah, what's been useful has been that I think the association and some people who have been very like entrepreneurial about heavy music, they've just been doing PR like crazy for bands.
We actually have a streaming platform which made by Estonians for Estonian music, actually.
Okay.
But I don't know how that's going.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's going that well. From what I've heard.
Were you guys approached from the filmmaker or somebody who were related with the film to do this music, or was there something about the film that made you want to write this piece of music for?
Johan, je te laisse répondre.
We had a proposition to make a performance with a French museum called Museum Quai Branly. And we had access to their movie base, but being based in Bordeaux and them being in Paris, and they didn't allow the movies to go outside, so we needed to go on place to watch it, and it was the only one we knew before. So the choice went really fast on that documentary.
Yes, as Johan say, it was a proposal. We didn't decide one day, yes, let's do something with Jean Rouch, even if some of us were a big fan of Jean Rouch's work. But yes, we received this offer to design a kind of performance around the movie, and it was a part of an exhibition called the invention of the savage. I don't know if the translation is okay, but it was around the figure of the so-called savage and how it was built and how it was invented.
We kind of talked, I think, generally as creative people, always trying to push ourselves further into new things, whether that was previous records with synthesizers or the last record of just like any song I write is Wolves at the Gate, and I don't have to put these limitations on it.
Right.
Was that your creative hurdle this time around, of just like the narrative aspect, as opposed to, not that there's not a creative side to the music, but like, was that the hurdle of like a different way to write and approach songwriting?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So like the new hurdle was, okay, I've already sort of drawn out the rough map of what the story is, also what I want the world to be and feel like. And so the songs have to then depict that. Musically, there's emotions that need to happen to fit the story. And so are these songs serving the story rather than, is this just a cool song I like,
Yeah.
Which was a fun challenge because it really pushed me. If I knew a certain song needed to fit in a certain place and had to convey a certain emotion and a feeling and like sort of vibe and environment, then it kind of it was already like predetermined. I just didn't know what it would end up sounding like a song like Law of the Land. You know, I knew what I wanted that song to be about, and it was going to be about the brutal reality of kind of the way that we live, sort of vengefully, like an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Like our idea of justice is really flawed. You know, we want justice when we're wrong, but we want mercy when, you know, we've wronged somebody else.
Yeah.
And so I knew the song needed to feel a bit merciless, you know? And so that's kind of how I went about it that way.